My name is Lara Voss, and October in Pinecrest Estates, Georgia, arrives like a warning. Cold winds rattling those perfect white picket fences, leaves scraping across driveways like fingernails on a chalkboard. That night, the wind howled through the gaps in my brand new siding while I sat at my kitchen island, staring at the HOA documents that would destroy everything I'd worked for. I'd been at Northbridge Compliance for 3 years, splitting my time between system audits and fraud prevention. The job paid enough that I could finally afford this 3-bedroom dream in the prestigious Pinecrest Estates after my divorce left me starting over. Every time I saved for extras, though, the HOA would hit me with another fee or my neighbor Mrs. Langley would guilt me into community contributions. Community helps community, she always said, even when that community slowly bled you dry with beige-only shutters and grass measured to the millimeter. Barbara Babs Whitaker had been HOA president for 8 years. She worked part-time from her home office when she felt like it, which wasn't often. Mostly she cruised the streets in her golf cart, clipboard in hand, waiting for someone to step out of line. She had this way of making her presence felt even when she wasn't in your yard, those passive-aggressive neighborhood emails at 2 a.m., the security cameras that somehow only caught your trash can being 2 inches over the line. Sign here. She slapped the papers down on my island, her breath sweet with artificial vanilla from her favorite candle. And here, I recognized the letterhead. First National Bank of Riverton. A massive refinance on the community clubhouse, plus an emergency special assessment loan for Dirk's Construction Company. Both documents had cosigner lines. My name was already typed in the blank. I'm not signing anything, I said, sliding them back. Babs's face darkened. She had one of those faces that flipped from sweet southern belle to venomous in a heartbeat. Pearl necklace. Perfect bob. The kind of build that made people apologize for existing in grocery aisles. Lara. Honey, the whole neighborhood needs this. Interest rates are killing our reserves. I knew better. I'd spent enough time auditing to spot predatory terms. Variable rates ballooning in 18 months. Hidden fees. My personal liability if the HOA defaulted. Then you and the board can sign it yourselves. Can't. Credits are shot. She leaned back, studying me with that smile that made my skin crawl. 28 years old. Steady job. Clean history. You're golden. Sweetie. I hated when she called me that. The answer's no. Mrs. Langley appeared in the doorway, still in her gardening gloves. She looked exhausted, the kind of tired that came from years of nodding along. Lara. Sweetie. Just sign. We all have to pitch in. Mrs. Langley. Don't, I said quietly. My name on those loans. If the HOA defaults, or worse, if it's embezzlement, it ruins my credit. I won't be able to refinance my own mortgage. Always thinking about yourself, she spat. Just like your ex. The comparison stung. My ex had walked out 3 years ago, leaving debt and silence. Mrs. Langley never forgave me for bringing drama into the perfect neighborhood. Babs stood up, her chair scraping the tile like a threat. Sign the papers. Lara. No. The first blow came from nowhere. An open-handed slap that snapped my head sideways. I'd seen Babs angry before, seen her fine single moms for unapproved bird feeders, but she'd never touched me. The shock froze me. Sign them. This time it was a closed fist connecting with my left shoulder. I heard the pop, felt the joint separate, white-hot pain shooting down my arm. I screamed, clutching it. And that's when I saw Mrs. Langley standing at the window. She was watching. Just watching. You brought this on yourself, she said, voice flat. Then she turned away. Babs grabbed the papers, tried to force the pen into my right hand. I fought back, knocked over the island stool, sent documents flying. She hit me again, ribs this time, and I curled up, protecting the dislocated shoulder. Stubborn little thing, she muttered. gathering the pages. You'll sign eventually. They always do. She left me there on the floor, cradling my arm. I could hear her outside talking to Mrs. Langley in low tones. She'll come around. Give her time. Can't afford to lose this assessment. I pulled myself up using the counter. Every movement sent fresh agony through my shoulder. My shirt was torn, blood seeping where her ring had caught skin. In the hallway mirror, bruises bloomed around my eye, marks on my throat where she'd grabbed me. This wasn't about clubhouse upgrades. This was about control, about keeping every homeowner trapped, dependent, signing whatever kept Babs in power and Dirk's pockets lined. She knew exactly what she was doing. How many residents had signed papers they shouldn't have? How many futures had been stolen on clipboards just like this one? I grabbed my keys with my good hand, didn't bother with a jacket. The October wind hit me like another slap, but I welcomed it, clean, cold, free. As I drove away one-handed, shoulder screaming with every turn, I made myself a promise. This wasn't over. Babs thought she'd won. Thought I'd crawl back and sign just to keep the peace. She was wrong. Tomorrow was the annual Pinecrest HOA Gala. My first as a full homeowner, the night everyone would see me welcomed into the fold. But first, I had another ceremony to attend. One involving police reports, photographs, and evidence that would ensure Barbara Whitaker never put her hands or her rules on anyone again. The drive to Sophie's apartment took 20 minutes, though it felt like hours with my shoulder grinding bone on bone. I hadn't spoken to my cousin in 2 years. Not since the last block party when she'd called Babs out for fining her for excessive holiday lights. Mrs. Langley had taken Babs's side. Of course. Sophie left before dessert. Her building sat on the decent side of town, a 3-story complex with actual working gates. I parked crooked, struggled out, and made my way to Unit 312. My reflection in the glass door stopped me. Torn shirt, swelling eye, blood on the collar. I looked like a victim. The word made me want to punch something. I knocked. Sophie opened on a chain, green eyes widening. Without a word, she undid it and stepped aside. Her apartment smelled like lavender and fresh coffee. So different from the stale HOA meeting scent of Babs's clipboard. Sophie guided me to the kitchen table, saying nothing. She'd gone into physical therapy instead of nursing like her mom. Her hands were gentle as she examined my shoulder. Posterior dislocation, she said finally. "ER now. I know what I need," I said, voice rough. "The question is whether I should do it." Sophie paused. "You mean calling the police?" Calling the police meant burning every bridge with Mrs. Langley. It meant court dates and lawyers and having our neighborhood drama spread across the county. I laughed bitterly. Family like they ever treated me like family. She moved to the freezer, pulled out peas wrapped in a towel. "Hold this. I'll make soup." I watched her, efficient and calm. They wanted me to co-sign the assessment, refinance plus Dirk's truck loan disguised as community work. When I said no, I gestured at myself. "Let me guess," Sophie said, not turning. Mrs. Langley stood there and watched. The accuracy stung. She said I brought it on myself. Of course she did. Sophie set a bowl of homemade tomato soup in front of me. You know why I cut ties? It wasn't just the fines. It was watching Mrs. Langley enable Babs. Watching her choose the HOA family over blood again and again. She's still our neighbor. No. She's the woman who gave birth to drama. There's a difference. Real community doesn't use your name to take out loans. Real neighbors don't stand by while you're being hurt. The soup was too hot. But I ate anyway. If I called the police, there was no going back. Honey, there's already no going back. You think Babs is going to forget this? She'll push harder next time. She reached across, covered my hand. The only question is whether you protect yourself now or wait until it's worse. I thought about Babs's words. They always do. How many times had she done this? How many homeowners had she broken until they signed? I need to document everything first, I heard myself say. Photos, medical records, paper trail. Sophie smiled. There's the cousin I remember. Always 3 steps ahead. She helped me change shirts, then drove me to Northside Medical Center. The ER was quiet. The triage nurse fast-tracked us. Sophie stayed as they reset my shoulder. A sharp grinding pain that made me bite through my lip. Then came the photos. Every angle, every bruise, every cut. The nurse, Patricia, was thorough. Domestic assault? She asked gently. HOA president. She wanted me to cosign fraudulent loans. Patricia's face hardened. Financial abuse on top of physical. I see it too often. The police officer arrived an hour later. Officer Ortiz, young and serious. She recorded everything, even the parts that made me sound pathetic for staying compliant so long. This wasn't the first time, I said. She said they always sign eventually. Ortiz made a note. We'll look into that. For now, emergency protective order. I wanted it. The paperwork took another hour. By midnight we were at the pharmacy for pain meds, then the kiosk for my credit report. Under fluorescent lights I scrolled. 3 hard inquiries from First National, all HOA related. Then at the bottom, a UCC-1 filing listing me as co-debtor for Pinecrest Community Projects, LLC. He'd already been using my name. Sophie looked over my shoulder. How? I thought back. The welcome packet, Mrs. Langley had me sign last month. Just a formality. She must have copied my signature. That's fraud. Identity theft. Leverage. He's been planning this, I corrected. Setting up the pieces. I looked at Sophie. I need to stop her before she destroys my credit completely. Sophie drove me back in silence. She handed me her laptop. First thing tomorrow. Call the bank. Get copies of everything with your name. Then we see a lawyer. She paused. Where are you staying? Hotel. Like hell. Guest rooms ready. You're here until this is sorted. I wanted to argue, but my shoulder throbbed and my face looked like I'd gone 10 rounds. Somewhere out there, Babs was probably forging more signatures. Thank you, I said quietly. Sophie squeezed my good shoulder. Real neighbors protect neighbors. As I lay in her guest bed that night, shoulder in a sling, I thought about choices. About realizing the people who should have your back are the ones causing harm. About deciding whether to stay silent or speak up. Knowing speaking up meant losing the only community you'd known. But Sophie was right. I'd already lost them the moment Mrs. Langley watched Babs hit me and blamed me for it. Now it was just paperwork and consequences. Tomorrow I'd start the process. Police reports, bank investigations, lawyers. But tonight, in a bed that didn't smell like HOA meeting coffee, I let myself feel the grief. The neighborhood I thought I had was gone. The question was what I'd build in its place. The police station at 8 a.m. looked different in morning light. Officer Ortiz met me, folder under her arm. How's the shoulder? Sore. She led me to an interview room. She opened the folder, my statement, hospital photos, protective order. I ran Barbara Whitaker through the system. 2 previous domestic complaints, different neighborhoods, no arrests. Victims declined charges. Both involved financial disputes. My stomach turned. She's done this before. Pattern matters in court. Also found something interesting. She pulled another paper. 3 years ago, a woman named Denise filed a fraud complaint. Said her HOA president used her info for a business loan. Guess who? Babs. Case went nowhere. She withdrew, moved out of state. But it establishes history. Now tell me about this. She placed the UCC-1 printout down. I explained the welcome packet. How Babs must have copied my signature. That's how she knew she could forge it. She's been practicing. We'll need proof. Can you get documentation from the old welcome packet? I can try. Good. Meanwhile, I've got enough for a warrant on the assault. But if we prove the fraud, she smiled grimly. That's federal. An hour later, Sophie drove me to First National Bank. My face looked worse in daylight. Purple bruising, finger marks turning yellow-green. The security guard did a double take. Marcus Tranby, loan officer, couldn't have been older than 30. His expression shifted from smile to concern. I need to see all loan documents with my name, I said. He hesitated. I'll verify identity. I slid my license across. I've filed a police report. Identity theft. Officer Ortiz has the case number. That changed everything. Marcus typed rapidly. Frowned. I show 3 applications. 2 submitted last week. Clubhouse refinance and assessment. 1 from 6 months ago for a construction loan. He turned the monitor. The construction loan showed approved and funded. $40,000 to Whitaker Construction LLC. My name as personal guarantor. The signature looked perfect. Too perfect. I need copies of everything, especially signature pages. Marcus printed while I studied. The notary seal caught my eye, Mobile Notary Services LLC. Same notary on all 3. This notary, I said. Do you have contact? They're not on our approved list. Red flag. Can you tell me date and time? October 3rd, 2:30 p.m. I pulled my work schedule. I was in a compliance meeting 30 miles away, timestamp security entry. Marcus went pale. We have procedures. He called his manager, Catherine Volkoff. What followed was a careful dance. Yes. I'd cooperate with their investigation. Yes. Freeze the accounts. Yes. Pursue charges. We'll provide a report, Catherine said. We take fraud seriously. If our department failed due diligence, there will be consequences. By noon, I had a banker's box and a promise of cooperation. The construction loan had $15,000 withdrawn in cash over 3 months. Materials according to memos, though I doubted any actual clubhouse work happened. Next stop, the old welcome packet office at Pinecrest Admin Building. The manager, Sheila, remembered me. You always paid fees on time. Shame you questioned the new rules. I did sign the welcome packet. Mrs. Langley returned it for me. Sheila frowned, flipped pages. I show you giving notice of compliance issues. She pulled a paper. But this isn't your signature. I compared. Close, but the swoop on the V was wrong. Babs forged the notice, Sophie said quietly, so she could keep the real signature. Sheila made copies, including security footage of a middle-aged man in a construction shirt, Dirk himself, dropping off the notice. By the time we got back to Sophie's, I was exhausted, pain meds wearing off, shoulder like ground glass. But we weren't done. I called the notary service. The woman sounded tired. I need to verify a notarization. October 3rd for Lara Voss. Keyboard clicks. Yeah, I have it. Community loan documents. Where did it take place? Says here mobile service came to your home. She read off Mrs. Langley's address where I hadn't lived. I need to tell you something. I wasn't at that address. Someone forged my signature and your notary stamped it. Silence. I need to talk to my supervisor. You do that. And let them know police and First National will be calling. I hung up. Sophie was already on her laptop. Mobile Notary Services LLC. Registered to. Interesting. Business address is a UPS store. Incorporated 8 months ago, right when the first fraudulent assessment was processed. Think Babs set it up. I rubbed my good eye. My phone buzzed. Text from unknown number. You're making a mistake. Come back to the neighborhood and we can fix this. Then another. Mrs. Langley is crying. And another. You always were ungrateful. Babs? Sophie asked. Or Mrs. Langley? Maybe both. I showed her. They're panicking. Good. Save those witness intimidation. As I screenshotted, I thought about tomorrow, the HOA Gala. I'd imagined walking into that event so many times. Mrs. Langley in the audience pretending to be proud. Babs playing the supportive president for the cameras. Now I pictured something different. Serving papers. Police. The truth laid bare. You okay? Sophie asked. Just thinking about the gala. She squeezed my hand. You're still going. You earned your place here. Oh, I'm going. I smiled. And for the first time since Babs's fist connected, felt real. They wanted to play community for the cameras. I'd give them a show they'd never forget. My phone buzzed again. Voicemail from Mrs. Langley. I almost deleted it, but Sophie shook her head. Document everything. On speaker, her voice filled the kitchen, thick with accusation. Lara, how could you? After everything we've done, you're destroying the neighborhood over money. Babs is sorry. She wants to apologize. Just come home. I deleted the rest. Some apologies come too late. Some bridges burn themselves. Tomorrow would bring more evidence, more steps toward justice. But tonight, surrounded by papers proving betrayal in black and white, I felt something besides anger. Free. I felt free. Thursday morning arrived with sirens. Not at Sophie's, 3 blocks over, where smoke rose black against the dawn sky. We stood on her balcony, coffee cooling, watching fire trucks navigate narrow streets. That's near Mrs. Langley's, Sophie said quietly. My phone rang. Officer Ortiz. Are you somewhere safe? At my cousin's. Why? There was a fire at your neighbor's residence. Started on the front steps. Accelerant used. Looks like a Molotov cocktail. My mug slipped, shattering. Is Mrs. Langley? She's fine. Neighbor saw flames. Called it in before it spread. But Lara, this looks like retaliation. Someone trying to destroy evidence or send a message. Babs, desperate enough to torch her own ally's house. We're moving you both to a safe house. The safe house was nondescript. 2 bedrooms, basic furniture, windows facing a parking lot. Officers would drive by hourly. Felt like a prison, but necessary. I spent the morning updating my evidence log, adding arson to the list. Assault, identity theft, fraud, witness intimidation, attempted arson. Babs was escalating, getting sloppy. Sophie worked from her laptop, rescheduling patients. You know what strikes me? The timing. Why burn now? Destroy evidence or distract? She pulled up a news alert. Local notary arrested in multibank fraud scheme. Patricia Kramer's mugshot stared back. The article detailed her arrest at the airport, $50,000 cash and laptop full of forged documents. She flipped, I said. That's why Babs torched the house. Her partner got arrested. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Then recognized the area code, Dirk's construction office. Is this Lara Voss? Male voice. Nervous. James Morrison. I used to work with Dirk. I'm listening. I heard about the investigation. You're not the only one. He did this at other HOAs too. Used resident info for equipment loans. Defaulted. Company hushed it up, but some of us kept records. Would you share? Pause. I got a family. Can't go public. But there's a coffee shop on Meridian. Java Junction. There might be a manila envelope under the corner booth cushion in about an hour. He hung up. Sophie drove. The safe house rules. No going alone. Vary routes. Stay vigilant. The coffee shop was busy, perfect cover. I ordered a latte I didn't want and slid into the booth. The envelope was there, thick with photocopies. Employment records showing Dirk had access to dozens of residents' social security numbers, loan documents with forged signatures, internal memos discussing irregularities and the decision to terminate quietly rather than pursue charges. Image management, Sophie said, reading over my shoulder. They cared more about the HOA's reputation than stopping a predator. One document stood out, a witness statement. Dirk bragged about his system, said he'd found a foolproof way to get startup capital, mentioned teaching others the method. Teaching others. How many Babs were out there using the same playbook? Back at the safe house, I added the new evidence. The case was bigger than just me now, multiple victims across years, possibly a network of corrupt HOAs. The FBI would be interested. That evening I sat down to write. Not another evidence log, but a blog post. How my HOA president stole my identity. A step-by-step guide to spotting financial predators. I detailed the warning signs I'd missed. The request to just sign here. The guilt trips about community helping community. The escalation when I said no. I included resources, how to check credit, report fraud, get help if pressured to sign HOA documents. You're going public? Sophie asked. After the arrest. Yes. Other homeowners need to know they're not alone. She squeezed my good shoulder. Proud of you. That night's sleep wouldn't come. Tomorrow was the gala, and I still hadn't heard from Babs. She was out there, watching her empire of lies crumble. The fire showed she was desperate. What would desperation drive her to next? My phone lit up with a text from Mrs. Langley. No words, just a photo. My guest room at her house, ransacked, drawers pulled out, mattress flipped, papers everywhere. He'd been looking for something. Another text. She thinks you have documents hidden here, old bank statements. I told her you took everything. Then she didn't believe me. I stared at the wreckage of the room where I'd done paperwork and dreamed of a future without rules. Now violated by the woman who'd already stolen so much. Sophie, I called softly. She appeared, took one look. What now? I showed the texts. She's looking for evidence. Must think I kept copies. Did you? No. But wait, my old laptop. It's in the closet there from when I first moved in. It might have scans of old documents, tax returns with my signature, templates for forgery. Exactly. I called Officer Ortiz, reported the break-in. She promised units, but we both knew Babs would be long gone. We've got bulletins out. Her golf cart was spotted heading north, but we lost her near the county line. Don't worry, she can't run forever. But she didn't need forever, just long enough to destroy evidence, threaten witnesses, maybe take one last shot at the person who'd exposed her. Me. I spent the remaining dark hours updating passwords, freezing credit, building digital walls. By dawn, I'd locked down every account Babs might exploit. The irony wasn't lost. Here I was, hours from the HOA Gala, using every compliance skill I'd learned to protect myself from my own neighborhood. Sophie made breakfast, eggs and toast. Simple fuel for a complicated day. You ready for this? For the gala or for whatever Babs might do? Both. I rotated my healing shoulder. I'm ready to stop being afraid. Ready to stop letting her control the narrative. Speaking of narrative, Sophie pulled up something on her laptop. Mrs. Langley posted on the neighborhood Facebook. Vintage Mrs. Langley, a photo of her and Babs from last Labor Day, smiling like perfect neighbors. Caption. Praying for reconciliation with our new homeowner. Mental health struggles can tear communities apart, but we're believing for healing. Mental health struggles. She was setting up the narrative where I was the unstable one, where my accusations were symptoms rather than truth. Screenshot that. Add to evidence. You're not going to respond. Oh, I am. Just not how she expects. I opened my own Facebook. Uploaded a single photo, my hospital bracelet next to the police report number. Caption: Gala night. Learning that community isn't always neighbors and neighbors aren't always community. Thank you to everyone who supported me this week. See you at the gala. It's going to be memorable. Within minutes, comments flowed. Neighbors asking if I was okay. Coworkers offering support. Then buried in responses, a comment from a profile with no photo. Can't wait to see you walk into the gala. Community should stick together. Babs. She was coming. I showed Sophie. She called Ortiz while I contacted event security. They promised increased presence. But the Pinecrest Community Center was huge. Thousands attending. Easy to get lost in a crowd. You don't have to go, Sophie said. No, the word came out hard. I earned my place here. Earned it through late nights auditing while everyone said I was wasting time. Through believing I deserved better even when the neighborhood said I didn't. I'm walking in, she smiled. Then let's make sure you're ready for whatever comes next. We spent the hours preparing. Not just for a gala but for confrontation. For an ending written in court documents and police reports. By noon the safe house felt less like protection and more like a cage. Somewhere out there Babs was making her own preparations. The hunter becoming the hunted. Desperate and dangerous. Good. Let her come. I had something special planned. The invitation came from Pinecrest HOA Printing Services. Official ivory cardstock with the community seal. Standard for all homeowners. But what I planned required something extra. You sure about this? Sophie watched as I designed a custom RSVP card on her laptop. Babs wants to play community. Let her RSVP like community. I adjusted the font. Made it look official. The HOA sends digital tickets now anyway. This is supplemental. The design was simple. QR code linking to a private event page I'd created, complete with tracking analytics. Below it, elegant script, Pinecrest HOA Annual Gala, guest confirmation. Lara Voss. Please confirm attendance for reserved seating. Yes. No. Special neighbor check-in opens at 9:30 a.m. Main lobby. Present this card for priority access. The QR code logged IP addresses, device ID, timestamp, location. I hit print. Watched the cards emerge. It's not technically illegal. Event organizers track RSVPs all the time. But the police will be waiting at the neighbor check-in. Only if someone with an active warrant shows up. Otherwise, it's just a gala. I'd already coordinated with Ortiz. The plan was simple. Babs was arrogant enough to think she could intimidate me at my own event. The RSVP would give law enforcement exact timing and location for a clean arrest, away from main crowds. I addressed 2 envelopes, one to Mrs. Langley's damaged house, one to Dirk's last known associate. Inside each, the official invitation and my special RSVP card. What if they don't take the bait? Sophie asked. Then I attend in peace. Win-win. But I knew Babs. Knew her need for control. Her rage at being challenged. She'd come. That afternoon I met with Eleanor Rodriguez, the attorney Sophie recommended. Her office was leather and dark wood. She reviewed my evidence boxes. This is comprehensive. The identity theft alone would get her 5 to 10. At assault, witness intimidation, arson. She looked up. Has she tried to contact you directly through Mrs. Langley and that Facebook comment? Good. Document everything. Now about the gala plan. Is it entrapment? Eleanor smiled. You're inviting neighbors to the gala. If someone with warrants chooses to attend a public event, that's on them. The RSVP is just helpful logistics. She prepared additional documents, a cease and desist, paperwork to remove my name from fraudulent accounts, forms to recover damages. We'll move fast on the civil side. Freeze any assets before they disappear. What assets? Babs never had money. But see, Whitaker Construction LLC did. That $40,000 loan will trace every penny. By evening, I was back at the safe house, watching event page analytics. Someone had clicked the QR code at 4:47 p.m. IP traced to a coffee shop on the north side. They'd spent 3 minutes, long enough to read every detail about the special neighbor check-in. Hooks baited, I told Sophie. She was steaming my gala dress, trying to get the wrinkles out. You know, most people just worry about tripping on the dance floor. Most people didn't have Babs for a president. My phone rang. Mrs. Langley, we got your invitation. This is cruel. Lara. Sending gala announcements when you're trying to destroy the neighborhood. I'm not trying to destroy anything. Just documenting what Babs already destroyed. She's not a bad woman. She's just frustrated. The construction business is hard and you refusing to help. Is that what she told you? That this is my fault? I laughed bitterly. Mrs. Langley, she's been forging signatures for years. Before me there was Denise. 2 other women I haven't identified yet. This isn't frustration. It's a pattern. Silence. Then, those are just community disputes. No. It's fraud. It's theft. It's abuse. I took a breath. Are you coming tomorrow to the gala? How can we? You'll have us arrested. I'll have her arrested if she violates the protective order. You're free to come if you come alone. We're neighbors. We do things together. There it was. The choice she'd keep making. Stand by her HOA president even as Babs dragged her down. Then I guess I'll see you when I see you, I said softly and hung up. Later, unable to sleep, I reviewed everything one more time. The evidence was solid. The plan was set. Security briefed. Police on standby. District attorney sending someone to observe. All because one woman couldn't accept the word no. Sophie found me at 3 a.m. surrounded by documents. You need rest. I need this to be over. Tomorrow it will be. She sat beside me, careful of my shoulder. You know what I keep thinking? How she said they always do, always sign eventually. How many homeowners didn't fight back? How many couldn't afford to? I picked up the forensic handwriting analysis. Legal fees, time off work, safe housing. Fighting back is expensive. If the first woman's complaint had been taken seriously, you're stopping her now. That matters. I hoped so. Hoped the blog post would help other victims. Hoped the arrest would make the news. Hoped documentation and determination could undo years of damage. My phone buzzed. The event page showed new activity. Someone had not only clicked but filled out the form. The name field read Barbara Whitaker, and the confirmation was checked. Yes. She took the bait. I whispered. Sophie looked at the screen. 9:30 a.m. Main lobby. She's really going to show. Of course she is. In her mind, she's the victim. The wronged president whose ungrateful homeowner is causing trouble. I closed the laptop. She'll come to make a scene, to guilt me into dropping charges. Instead, she'll walk into her own arrest. Sleep finally came as dawn approached, bringing dreams of spotlights and handcuffs, community plaques and mugshots. When I woke, Gala Day had arrived with clear skies and a sense of ending. Sophie made coffee while I dressed carefully, business clothes under the dress. Hair pulled back to show the fading bruises on my neck. Evidence even now. Ready? She asked. I picked up my clutch, ran my fingers over the invitation. 5 years of compliance work reduced to this moment, but also 5 days of fighting back, of refusing to be another homeowner whose name got stolen along with her future. Ready. We loaded the evidence boxes into her car just in case. Ortiz texted confirmations, teams in place, warrants ready. Everyone briefed. As we drove toward the community center, I thought about the 2 ways this day could go. Maybe Babs would see the trap, stay away, or maybe her arrogance would win, bring her strutting in, convinced she could still control the narrative. Either way, I was attending. Either way, I was free. The community center parking lot was already filling when we arrived. Families with balloons, homeowners in their best clothes, a celebration of perfect neighborhoods. I envied them for a moment. Then I straightened my shoulders, the good one and the healing one, and prepared for what was anything but a normal gala. Time to spring the trap. The call came at 7 a.m. Gala morning. Not Ortiz, Marcus from the bank. MS. Vas. Something urgent. Remember Patricia Kramer, the notary? She's talking. Full cooperation. She had records, every fraudulent notarization. Who paid her? Dates? Amounts. His voice dropped. Your HOA president isn't the only one she's naming, but she's the biggest fish. She kept audio recordings. There's one from last Tuesday. Babs discussing shutting you up permanently. I gripped the phone tighter. Audio. She was paranoid. Recorded meetings as insurance. FBI wants to know if you've had direct threats. The fire. The slashed tires. The ransacked room. Yeah, you could say that. They're very interested in attending your gala. Officially. After I hung up, I found Sophie in the kitchen already dressed. Change of plans. The FBI is coming to the party. Her eyes widened as I explained. A recorded threat of violence moved this beyond state charges into federal territory. Babs wasn't just looking at fraud anymore. She was looking at conspiracy. My phone buzzed. Ortiz. Federal agents just briefed me. This is bigger than we thought. Kramer's flipping on an entire ring of fake notaries across 3 states, all trained in the same method. Your president was apparently recruiting, teaching others her system. A fraud franchise, I said, sickened. The agent in charge wanted to meet me before the ceremony. We arrived at the center by 8:15. The vast lobby was mostly empty. Maintenance crews setting up. Inside the main lobby, a command post had been established, subtle but visible. Campus, no. Event security, local police. 3 people in FBI windbreakers. Agent Sarah Kim introduced herself with a firm handshake. Mid-40s. Sharp eyes. MS. Vas. Your documentation started an avalanche. We've been tracking this network for months without a solid lead. You gave us the thread to unravel it all. I just wanted my name back. You're getting more than that. Kramer's recordings are illuminating. Your president wasn't just stealing identities. She was teaching seminars, financial liberation through strategic partnerships. She called it, charged desperate HOAs $500 to learn how to forge documents. I thought of James Morrison's words about Dirk bragging, teaching others. How many victims? We're still counting. Over 100 we've identified so far. She pulled out a tablet, played an audio file. Babs's voice, slurred with wine but clear enough. That thinks she's smart. Filing reports. I know where she's staying. Her and that cousin. One match. Middle of the night. Problem solved. Can't testify if you're not breathing. My blood went cold. Sophie grabbed my hand. When was this recorded? Tuesday night. Hours before the fire. We think she had second thoughts about killing you. Settled for intimidation instead. Agent Kim's expression was grave. But someone who's already committed arson, who's cornered and desperate, we're taking the threat seriously. So what's the plan? Same as before, just with more backup. She shows up. We arrest her. But now it's not just state charges. It's federal conspiracy, wire fraud, witness intimidation, and potential attempted murder. She paused. Your RSVP trap was clever. She confirmed attendance. I showed her the analytics. Checked yes yesterday afternoon. Outstanding. We'll have agents at every entrance. Undercover in the crowd. The moment she enters that lobby, it's over. By 9 o'clock homeowners were arriving. I stood near the information desk in my dress. Sophie beside me, trying to look normal while my heart hammered. the lobby filled with neighbors. But I could spot the undercover officers, a maintenance worker cleaning the same spot. A woman with an event badge checking her phone too often. 9:15. More people streaming in. I recognized neighbors from my night compliance meetings. Waved at a few normal interactions while waiting for my life to explode. 9:25. Officer Ortiz appeared at my elbow. Plain clothes. She's been spotted. Parking lot B. Sitting in her golf cart. Looks like she's psyching herself up. Or drinking, I said, remembering the slur. FBI's in position. Just act natural when she approaches. Natural, right? Sophie squeezed my good shoulder. You've got this. 9:29. Through the glass doors I saw her. Barbara Whitaker, dressed in her one good pastel suit, the one she wore to court dates and fundraisers. She looked older, haggard. 5 days of running etched on her face. But her walk was still confident, predatory. She pushed through the doors at exactly 9:30. I scanning. They found me. Narrowed. She started forward. Lara. Her voice carried across the space. We need to talk. I held my ground as she approached. Could see the bulge in her purse, not a gun. Wrong shape. Documents. Maybe some last attempt at coercion. Babs. I kept my voice steady. You got my invitation. Cut they. She was close now. Close enough I could smell the bourbon on her breath. Call off your dogs. Tell them it's a misunderstanding. Neighborhood business. Like the neighborhood business where you forged my signature or the neighborhood business where you dislocated my shoulder. Her face darkened. You always were ungrateful. Barbara Whitaker. Agent Kim's voice cut through. FBI. You're under arrest. She spun. Saw the agents closing in. For a second I thought she might run. Then her shoulders sagged. All that predatory confidence draining away. You set me up, she said to me as they cuffed her. Your own community. No, I said quietly. You set yourself up the first time you stole someone's name. I just documented it. As they led her away, Mrs. Langley appeared in the doorway. She must have been waiting in the car, watching. Our eyes met across the lobby. 20 feet and 20 years of dysfunction between us. You happy now? She called out. You destroyed her. She destroyed herself. I just refused to go down with her. She turned to follow the agents, probably already planning bail money she didn't have. Still choosing Babs even as she got loaded into a federal vehicle. The lobby erupted in whispers, homeowners who'd witnessed the arrest trying to make sense of it. But I was done being the center of that drama. Come on, Sophie said. You have a gala to attend. The ceremony itself felt surreal. Sitting with my fellow homeowners, listening to speeches about bright futures and endless possibilities while Babs was being processed into federal custody. When they called names for the new resident recognition, I walked across that stage on legs that barely felt real. Lara Voss Community Advocate Award. I shook the president's hand. No, the new interim presidents accepted my plaque and smiled for the official photographer. In the audience, Sophie cheered. Around her, thousands of strangers clapped politely, unaware they were witnessing the end of more than just my first year in the neighborhood. Afterward, in the chaos of photos and handshakes, Agent Kim found me again. Thought you should know Kramer gave us everything. Names, dates, amounts. Your documentation plus her testimony will put Babs away for a long time. She handed me a business card. You'll need to testify eventually, but the hard part's over. What about the others, her students in fraud? Rolling them up as we speak. Your blog post actually helped. 3 victims came forward after reading it. Said it gave them courage. She smiled. You didn't just save yourself, Ms. Voss. You saved dozens of future homeowners. As she walked away, I stood there holding my plaque. But more than that, holding my freedom. My name was mine again. My credit would be repaired. The woman who tried to steal my future was heading for a federal cell. So, Sophie said, appearing with a small wrapped gift. What now? I opened it. A new journal, leather-bound and embossed with my initials. My initials. My name. Mine. As I looked around the center at neighbors celebrating untainted achievements, I knew. Now I start over without them, without fear, without anyone else's name on my future but mine. The courtroom smelled like old wood and anxiety. 2 weeks after the gala, I sat in the witness preparation room reviewing my testimony while Eleanor shuffled documents. The emergency hearing for the permanent protective order was scheduled for 10 a.m. But this was bigger than just keeping Babs away. The federal prosecutor would be observing. Your testimony here builds their case, Eleanor said. Be specific about dates, times, amounts. And Laura, she looked up, Mrs. Langley will be there. She's listed as a witness for Babs. Of course she was. The door opened and ADA Jennifer Walsh entered, the prosecutor handling state charges. Young, fierce, Ms. Voss, I've reviewed your documentation. It's the most thorough victim preparation I've seen. She sat across from me. The defense will try to paint you as vindictive. Claim this is about property values or neighborhood politics. Don't let them rattle you. There is no inheritance. No neighborhood money. Just debt in my name I didn't create. Perfect. Keep that clarity. Walsh pulled out a tablet. Now, let's review the timeline once more. By 9:45 we were in the courthouse. I wore the same blazer from the gala, professional but not trying too hard. In the hallway I saw Mrs. Langley in her best dress. Babs in an orange jumpsuit and shackles, flanked by federal marshals. Her public defender looked overwhelmed. Mrs. Langley's eyes met mine, pleading. I looked away. The courtroom was smaller than expected. Judge Patricia Hendricks presiding, silver-haired, sharp-eyed. The gallery held reporters, FBI agents, and surprisingly 3 women I didn't recognize. Eleanor leaned over. Other victims. They came to support you. The hearing began with the state presenting evidence. Officer Ortiz testified about the assault, the photos, my injuries. The fire investigator detailed the arson, accelerant, $30,000 damage. Marcus from the bank explained the fraudulent loans, forged signatures, $55,000 stolen under my name. Then it was my turn. State your name for the record. Laura Voss. My voice came out stronger than I felt. Walsh led me through the story methodically. The night of the assault, the discovery of fraud, the pattern of abuse going back years. I kept answers clear, factual, emotional only when describing the moment I realized my own neighbor had enabled the theft of my identity. How long had Barbara Whitaker been planning this fraud? Based on the documents, at least 8 months. She incorporated the LLC, established relationships with corrupt notaries, and studied my signature from the welcome packet. Objection. Overruled. Continue. I detailed everything, the mechanics, the construction loan, the pattern of using homeowners' identities as collateral. The gallery was silent except for the court reporter. What happened when you refused to sign the assessment documents? She hit me first open-handed, then with her fist, dislocated my left shoulder. I touched the still tender joint. Mrs. Langley watched from the window. She said I brought it on myself. One of the women in the gallery made a small sound. I recognized the pain. Another homeowner betrayed by those who should have protected her. Cross-examination came from Babs's defender, a tired man named Peterson. Ms. Voss, isn't it true you lived in the neighborhood less than a year? I paid all fees, followed every rule, and covered many community expenses. But yes, I was new, and when they asked for help with their financial situation, you refused. They asked me to commit fraud. So yes, I refused. Peterson tried another angle. You work in compliance, correct? Isn't it possible you're using your professional knowledge to exaggerate normal neighborhood financial arrangements? Eleanor objected. Sustained. But the damage was done, the implication that I was too sophisticated. Using my expertise against poor, simple Babs. No further questions. Walsh stood for redirect. Ms. Voss, what would have happened if you'd signed those documents? I'd have been personally liable for over $100,000 in debt I didn't incur. My credit would have been destroyed. I wouldn't have been able to refinance my house, possibly even pass employment background checks. She would have stolen my future. Thank you. Then came Mrs. Langley's testimony. She walked to the stand like approaching a funeral. Wouldn't look at me. Her voice shook as she was sworn in. Peterson led her through softball questions. Yes, Babs was a good leader. Yes, community helped community. Yes, I'd always been difficult about rules. Then Walsh's cross-examination began and Mrs. Langley's narrative crumbled. Mrs. Langley, were you aware your president was using your neighbor's identity for loans? She said it was just paperwork. Temporary. I see. And when she physically assaulted your neighbor, where were you? Mrs. Langley's hands twisted. I was at the window, but you could see what was happening. Yes. And what did you do? Silence stretched. Finally, I told her she brought it on herself. You blamed your neighbor for being assaulted because she wouldn't sign fraudulent loans. I didn't know they were fraudulent. Walsh pulled up an email on the courtroom screen. This is from your email account to Babs. Dated 6 months ago. You'll see highlighted. Make sure the notary doesn't ask questions about L being present. L would be Laura. Mrs. Langley's face went white. I don't remember that, but it's your email address. Your typical sign-off. Yes. So you knew your neighbor wouldn't be present for notarizations in her name. Peterson objected, but the damage was done. Mrs. Langley had known, had helped, had chosen Babs over me every step. The FBI agent testified next, playing portions of Kramer's recordings. Babs's voice filled the courtroom, bragging about her system, discussing how to handle homeowners who wouldn't cooperate. The threat against my life played last, her slurred words about making me stop breathing echoing off the walls. Judge Hendricks had heard enough. I've reviewed extensive documentation. What I see is a calculated pattern of financial abuse escalating to physical violence and threats of murder. Ms. Whitaker, you systematically targeted homeowners, including your newest resident, for identity theft. When she refused to participate, you assaulted her. She turned to Mrs. Langley. Your enabling of this abuse, your active participation in the fraud is deeply troubling. A neighbor's first duty is to protect her community. Finally, she addressed me. Ms. Voss, the permanent protective order is granted. Ms. Whitaker is prohibited from any contact with you, direct or indirect, for 10 years. Given the federal charges pending, I suspect she'll be incarcerated for most of that time. The gavel came down. It was over. In the hallway afterward, the 3 women from the gallery approached. Denise Hartley, the victim I'd found in the records, Maria Santos, and Jennifer Park. Thank you, Denise said simply. I tried to fight her 3 years ago, but I was alone. No one believed me. We've all been getting our credit repaired, Maria added. The FBI victim advocate is helping us recover damages. We exchanged numbers, formed an impromptu support group in the courthouse hallway. For women whose names had been stolen by the same woman, finally taking them back. Mrs. Langley emerged, saw our group, and hurried the other direction. No last words. No reconciliation. Just retreat. Eleanor touched my elbow. The federal trial won't be for months, but this was a good start. Your testimony was perfect. What happens to Mrs. Langley? That's up to the federal prosecutors. She's clearly an accessory, but whether they charge her, Eleanor shrugged. Depends if they need her testimony against Babs. As we walked to the parking deck, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. But this time I recognized the area code State View Community College. Ms. Voss, this is Dr. Patricia Huang from the business department. I saw the news coverage of your case. We have an opening for a guest lecturer in our community advocacy and fraud prevention program. Your experience with HOA identity theft and fraud documentation would be invaluable. Interested, I stood there in the courthouse parking deck, surrounded by the aftermath of neighborhood destruction, and felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Possibility. A future that was mine to shape with my name on it and no one else's. Tell them yes, I told Eleanor, who was reading over my shoulder. Tell them I'm very interested. The drive back to Sophie's felt different. Lighter. The protective order was just paper, but it was paper with teeth. Babs would go to federal prison. Mrs. Langley would face her own consequences. And I would build something new from the ashes of what they'd burned down. My name was clear. My future was mine. And for the first time in my life, that was enough. 6 months later, the community center looked different in spring sunlight. No gala this time, instead banners reading, Small Business Expo and Financial Literacy Fair. I stood at a booth marked HOA Watchdog Initiative, watching families stream through the same doors where Babs had been arrested. 5 minutes to your presentation, Dr. Huang said, peering with coffee. My faculty advisor had become more than that, mentor, champion, friend. Nervous? No. And I wasn't. These people need to hear this. The past months had transformed everything. The lecturer program in community advocacy, the nonprofit I'd started with Denise, Maria, and Jennifer teaching homeowners to recognize financial predators, the book contract to tell our stories. But today was special. Today, in the same center where I'd attended my first gala, I was presenting The Anatomy of HOA Fraud, a survivor's guide, to an audience that included law enforcement, bank officials, and most importantly, potential victims. The presentation hall was packed. 300 people clutching the free workbooks we'd created, funded by a grant from the banking consortium that had inadvertently enabled Babs's crimes. Marcus Tranby sat in the front row, now heading First National's Fraud Prevention Task Force. I began with a photo, my hospital bracelet next to the police report. 6 months ago, the night before my first HOA Gala, the president assaulted me for refusing to sign fraudulent assessment documents. Today she's serving 12 years in federal prison. This is the story of how documentation saved my life. The audience was silent as I laid out Babs's methods, the incremental boundary pushing, the emotional manipulation, the forged signatures that looked so real even banks couldn't tell. I showed them actual documents, redacted but real, explaining how to spot the warning signs. Financial predators often start close to home, I said, clicking to a slide showing statistics. 70% of identity theft involves people you trust. They have access to your personal information, your trust, and most importantly, your silence. A woman in the third row was crying. I recognized the look, the weight of recognition. After the presentation, she'd approach me. They always did. I detailed the tools: free credit monitoring, document security, the questions to ask before co-signing anything. But more than that, I talked about the emotional cost, the guilt, the community pressure, the voice that says neighbors help neighbors, even as they destroy your future. The person who should have protected me stood at the window and watched me being assaulted. I said, letting the words hang. She blamed me for not capitulating to fraud. Your neighborhood's financial problems are not your responsibility to solve through crime. 45 minutes later, during Q&A, the questions came fast. What if they threatened to fine you out? How do you rebuild credit after identity theft? My president has been using my social security number since I moved in. I answered them all, providing resources, connections, hope. When time ran out, a line formed at my booth. People clutching paperwork, whispering stories, asking for help. Ms. Voss, a young woman, maybe 22, held out documents with shaking hands. I think my HOA president is doing what yours did. These signatures, I didn't sign these. I guided her to a quiet corner where Denise and Maria waited. We'd learned to work as a team. While they helped her document everything, I saw a familiar figure at the edge of the crowd. Mrs. Langley. She looked older, thinner. The house had been foreclosed after Babs's arrest. Too much debt, too many liens. Last I'd heard, she was living with her sister in Tennessee, but here she was holding one of our workbooks. I excused myself, walked over. Mrs. Langley, she wouldn't meet my eyes. I saw the announcement online. You're doing good work. Are you okay? A bitter laugh. Define okay. I'm not in jail, if that's what you mean. They gave me probation in exchange for testimony. She finally looked up. I helped put her away. Lara, I told them everything. Why are you here? She held up the workbook. Maybe if I'd known the signs. Maybe if someone had taught me. She trailed off. I'm volunteering at a women's shelter now. Thought this might help them. Part of me wanted to rage. Too little, too late. But I'd learned something in 6 months of helping victims. Sometimes the biggest predators were once prey themselves. Mrs. Langley had chosen Babs over me. Yes, but before that, someone had taught her that was normal. The presentation materials are online, I said carefully. Free to download and share. Lara, she stopped, started again. I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I'm sorry. I nodded. Not forgiveness, that would take more time than I had, but acknowledgement. She turned to go, then looked back. Your ex would be proud. You became what we couldn't. Someone who fights back. After she left, I returned to find Agent Kim at my booth. Babs's federal trial was in 2 months and we'd been preparing my testimony. Impressive turnout, she said. You know, we've used your case in training the Voss method. They're calling it comprehensive documentation plus strategic confrontation. How many more Babs have you found? 17 running similar schemes across 5 states. Your president was quite the entrepreneur. She smiled grimly. Was being the operative word. They're all facing federal charges now. By evening the expo was winding down. I'd spoken to over 100 people, collected 24 reports of suspected fraud, connected 3 urgent cases with law enforcement. My voice was hoarse, my feet hurt, but the work felt right. Sophie appeared with takeout bags. Thought you could use dinner. We sat in the empty presentation hall, eating Chinese food where I'd once walked across that stage. The center held no ghosts for me now. I'd reclaimed it, transformed it from a place of endings to beginnings. Dr. Huang mentioned you're considering the master's program, Sophie said. Community advocacy with a focus on HOA fraud. There's almost no research on it. No systematic approach to prevention. I picked at my low main. I want to build something that outlasts Babs's damage. You already have the nonprofit, the book, these workshops. But I want more. I want financial literacy taught in high schools. I want HOAs to have better verification systems. I paused, articulating a dream. I want no one to ever stand where I stood, realizing their neighborhood sold their future for quick cash. My phone buzzed. Denise texting from the parking lot. Young woman from Q&A filed police report. You saved another one today. Another one. They added up, homeowners taking back their names, their futures, their power. Each victory validating the choice I'd made in that hospital room. deciding to document rather than stay silent. Tomorrow would bring more work, trial preparation, nonprofit board meetings, dissertation proposals, the book edits exploring how community financial abuse intersected with identity theft, how trust became leverage in the wrong hands. But tonight, sitting in the community center with my chosen family, I felt the truth of transformation. 6 months ago, I'd attended a gala with a black eye and a dislocated shoulder, watching my HOA president get arrested. Now I was teaching others to spot the babs before they struck, to document the evidence, to choose their own futures over neighborhood dysfunction. Ready to go? Sophie asked. I looked around the center one more time. Maintenance crews were already setting up for tomorrow's event, a gun show. According to the schedule, different crowd, different purpose. But this space would always be mine in a way, the place where I'd refused to be a victim, where I'd set a trap with an RSVP card and leveraged a gala into justice. Yeah, I said, gathering the leftover materials. Let's go home. Home? My own apartment now, secured with credit that was slowly rebuilding. My name on the lease, no one else's. Every bill, every document, every piece of paper that proved I existed, all mine, all protected. Babs had taught me about signatures and their power. I'd learned the lesson differently than she'd intended. Your name was your promise, your bond, your future written in ink. And I'd never let anyone steal mine again. As we left the community center, I saw maintenance had already changed the main marquee. Congratulations, Spring 2025 homeowners. Another class would walk through those doors soon. Some of them would be like me, new residents fighting for their place while battling rules. I hoped none would stand where I had stood. But if they did, maybe they'd remember, document everything. Trust carefully. And never, ever sign your future away to someone else's greed. The center lights dimmed behind us. Tomorrow's battles waited. But tonight, I'd won. Federal Court, Eastern District. The morning of Babs's sentencing arrived with unseasonable rain, turning the courthouse steps slick. I stood under the portico with Eleanor, watching other victims arrive. 12 women in total, the full scope of Babs's fraud network finally revealed. Inside, the courtroom was packed. Media, FBI agents, victims' advocates, and in the third row Marcus with a delegation from the banking consortium. They'd come to witness the conclusion of what their oversight had enabled. Babs entered in shackles, orange jumpsuit hanging loose. Federal custody hadn't been kind. She'd lost weight, aged years in months. Her eyes found me immediately, still trying to intimidate across a crowded room. I didn't look away. That power was gone. Judge Robert Chin presided, a former prosecutor known for harsh sentences in financial crimes. The proceedings moved quickly. Babs had pleaded guilty to avoid trial, hoping for leniency. She was about to learn hope had limits. The prosecutor, ADA Michael Stevens, presented the scope. 12 victims defrauded of $847,000 over 3 years, a network of corrupt notaries across 5 states, assault, arson, witness intimidation. Ms. Whitaker didn't just steal money. She stole futures, destroyed credit, shattered neighborhoods. Then came victim impact statements. Denise spoke first, voice steady despite tears. Maria followed, describing bankruptcy, homelessness, years rebuilding from Babs's destruction. Each woman told her story, signatures forged, loans defaulted, lives derailed. I went last. Your Honor, Barbara Whitaker was my HOA president. In that time she studied me, my signature, my habits, my trust. She built a weapon out of my name and aimed it at my future. I held up a folder. This contains every fraudulent document she created with my signature. 43 separate forgeries. Each one an attempt to steal not just money, but my ability to build a life. I turned to face Babs directly. You thought I'd sign eventually. You said they always do. But I didn't. And because I didn't, 11 other women found the courage to come forward. Your empire of fraud collapsed because one person said no and meant it. Judge Chun called for Babs to speak before sentencing. She stood slowly, her lawyer beside her. I was desperate. The neighborhood is hard. I needed capital. You needed victims, Judge Chun interrupted. Babs's prepared speech crumbled. These women, they're exaggerating. It was just business. Business conducted with forged signatures and assault. Anything else? Babs's mouth opened, closed. Finally, no, Your Honor. Judge Chun shuffled papers, then delivered judgment with the weight of finality. Ms. Whitaker, you've shown no remorse, no recognition of the lives you've destroyed. You targeted homeowners specifically because you believed them easier to manipulate, less likely to fight back. You were wrong. For conspiracy to commit wire fraud, 60 months. For aggravated identity theft, 24 months consecutive. For witness intimidation. He continued through each charge, sentences stacking like the documents Babs had forged. Total sentence, 144 months in federal prison, 12 years. Additionally, ordered to pay full restitution to all victims, $847,000, and remain on supervised release for 5 years following incarceration. The gavel fell with devastating finality. Babs sagged against the defense table. 12 years. At her age, it was nearly a life sentence. As marshals prepared to lead her out, she looked back one more time, not at me, at the gallery of women whose names she'd stolen. The recognition hit her then, visible in her eyes. She'd built her own cage, signature by forged signature. Outside the courthouse, rain had given way to brilliant sunshine. The victims gathered on the steps. 12 women who'd refused to stay silent. Someone had arranged for a photographer, and we stood together, linked arms. Documented proof of survival. What now? Denise asked. Now we make sure this doesn't happen to others, I said. The group dispersed slowly, exchanging hugs, promises to stay in touch. The support network we'd built would outlast Babs's sentence. Maria mentioned starting a Spanish-language version of our workshops. Jennifer was working with Korean community centers. The ripples spreading. Marcus approached as I reached my car. Ms. Voss, the consortium wants to fund your nonprofit for the next 5 years. Full operational budget. It's the least we can do. I accepted his card, shook his hand. Accountability came in many forms. That evening I sat in my apartment, my name on the lease, my furniture, my life. The walls held my plaques, my lecturer certificate, certificates from the fraud prevention programs I now taught. But the most important document sat framed on my desk. The letter from the court confirming all fraudulent accounts had been removed from my credit report. My name cleared. Sophie called as I was making dinner. How do you feel? Free, I said simply. Finally, completely free. The next morning I returned to the community center for my guest lecture. 22 homeowners eager to understand the intersection of rules, identity, and crime. On the board I wrote, "Your signature is your bond." Today, I began. We're discussing the anatomy of HOA identity theft. Not the technical aspects, the human ones. How trust becomes a weapon. How neighbors can be the greatest threat. How documentation saves lives. A student raised her hand. Professor Voss, is it true your case is being used in FBI training? It is. The Voss method, comprehensive documentation plus strategic confrontation. But what I want you to understand is that I'm not special. I just refused to be silent. We spent 2 hours dissecting Babs's methods. The systemic failures that enabled her. The legal remedies available. But more importantly, we talked about prevention, recognition, The courage to say no when everyone insists you say yes. After class, I found an email waiting from Mrs. Langley. First contact since the expo 6 months ago. Lara, I saw the news about Babs's sentencing, 12 years. Part of me still can't believe it. Even though I know it's true. I've been in therapy trying to understand why I chose her over you. Why I watched her hurt you and blamed you for it. I don't have good answers. Just wanted you to know I'm working on being better. Not for forgiveness, I know that's not mine to ask for. Just to be better. Maybe someday we can have coffee. Maybe not. Either way, I'm proud of who you became despite us. I read it twice, then archived it. Maybe someday. Maybe not. The choice was mine. Now, as I prepared for my afternoon workshop at the credit union, my phone buzzed with a text from Agent Kim. Thought you'd want to know. We just arrested number 18 in the network. Your testimony has been instrumental in every case. Thank you, teen. From one woman's clipboard in Pinecrest to a federal investigation spanning half the country. All because I'd refused to sign my name on a lie. I thought about that night. October wind rattling windows. Babs's fist connecting with my shoulder. Mrs. Langley at the window choosing her. The pain had been real, immediate, overwhelming. But so had my decision to document everything. To turn violation into evidence. To transform personal trauma into public protection. My phone rang. A woman in Michigan, voice shaking, saying she'd found our website. Her president had been forging her signature. She didn't know what to do. First, I said, settling into the familiar rhythm. You're going to be okay. Second, get somewhere safe. Third, start documenting everything. I'm going to give you some numbers to call. 20 minutes later, she had a plan. Police report, credit freeze, legal resources. Another woman taking back her name. This was my life now, teaching, preventing, catching the ones who fell through the cracks. The master's program would start in fall. Professor Lara Voss had a nice ring to it. The book would publish next spring. The nonprofit expanded monthly. But more than any accomplishment, I valued this, sleeping peacefully, knowing my signature was mine alone. No one lurking in shadows with traced copies. No neighborhood demanding I sign away my future for their comfort. Just my name, my choices, my tomorrow. Babs would serve 12 years dreaming of the signatures she'd forged, the homeowners she'd trapped. I'd spend those same years making sure others never faced her predation. She'd built a cage of paper and lies. I'd built a fortress of truth and documentation. In the end, we both got exactly what we signed up for. My name is Lara Voss. I survived HOA identity theft, neighbor betrayal, and assault. I refused to sign fraudulent assessment documents, documented everything, and sent an RSVP that led to my president's arrest at the gala. But more than that, I turned trauma into purpose, silence into voice, victimhood into victory. Your signature is your promise, your bond, your future written in ink. Never let anyone steal it, not even neighbors, especially not neighbors. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you're tuning in from. Please share in the comments below so we can connect and exchange thoughts about this journey. If the story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. And if you really want to help more people discover this story, please press the like button to boost this video's reach. Your support means everything. And together we can help others recognize the warning signs before it's too late.